So today we are going to continue our series that we start a couple of weeks ago on the fourfold path of forgiveness based on the work of Desmond and his daughter Mfu Tutu. And they wrote a book about all their research and their fourfold path of forgiveness. And so I'm going to start off with a story that was written by Lauren Walker, who participates in the Forgiveness Project, which Desmond and Mfu were also, well, Desmond has passed, but helped to organize and bring about the institution of the work that the Forgiveness Project does. So it is a very moving story and inspirational story, and I would like to share it with you this morning. And so Lauren writes, I was visiting my sister for a short break when an evening that started out with expectations of fun and dancing left me seriously injured after an attempted rape and murder. I had just turned 24 and was the single parent of my sweet 5-year-old daughter, who I had when I was 18, wanting someone to love who wouldn't leave me. While waiting for my friend to finish bartending before we went dancing, I drank some beer and became a little bit intoxicated. I mistakenly went out the back door of the hotel bar onto a dark, deserted Waikiki street. A man spotted me, and his friendliness quickly turned violent. "Shut up or I will kill you," he warned, throwing me to the ground, his fist smashing my face. He knocked me unconscious. When I regained consciousness, his 10 fingers were wrapped tightly around my throat, and I couldn't breathe. As my life flashed through my mind, my final thought was of my child. And I gasped, I have a baby. And at this moment, he instantly let me go, and I ran for my life. "Too bad we can't take these prints on her neck," the policeman said, "to figure out who the assailant was." The bruises around my neck, along with my swollen black and blue face, bloodied eyeball, and facial numbness, were ugly reminders of what had happened. The surgeon cut open my cheek to save my eyeball. I was young and vain at the time, and the months of physical healing included anxiety that I would be permanently scarred. Worse still, I had to stay out of the ocean and could not work for months. I became deeply depressed. My shame and guilt were overwhelming. I felt like the attack was my fault. By drinking and putting myself in a dangerous situation, I had not only risked my life, but risked my daughter's security. I constantly asked myself, what would she have done without you? Why are you so awful that a stranger wanted to kill you? What's wrong with you? The thoughts echoed from my childhood living with a mentally ill parent, an abusive household, which I left to go on my own at age 14. One day, after sending my daughter off to kindergarten, I contemplated suicide. But instead of killing myself, I found a therapist. I am forever grateful for Harold Hall, PhD. He helped me feel worthy and altered my life course by insisting that I enroll at Kahua Community College. Having only completed the 9th grade of school with terrible grades at that, I didn't believe I was college material, and I was convinced I'd drop out before I even started. But days after starting college, I discovered I love school and somehow stumbled into a bright new path. I went straight through college, then law school in Boston, 7 years after the attack. I took the attorney licensing examination at the same Waikiki hotel where the police and ambulance had found me. Forgiving my attacker, oh, that was easy. He let me live. And my life was hugely improved by becoming a student and finding self-confidence and hope. But forgiving myself for what happened took me 25 years. Somehow I felt more ashamed and afraid that his compassion, not my strength, saved me. As the years passed, both prosecution and defense work left me disillusioned with the legal profession. I couldn't see it helping people, so I discovered public health, which led me to restorative justice. I learned that healing can be a part of a justice system, and I discovered self-forgiveness. Both the innocents and those who intentionally hurt others, who I've met through my work, have helped me learn how to forgive myself. They taught me that everyone needs love, that seeing our mistakes and poor decisions as indicators of unworthiness leads to self-absorption and more pain. We can find wisdom from our errors. We can use suffering to find more meaningful lives if we choose. Letting go of resentment for ourselves and others frees us to love deeper and allows us more focus to be mindful of the present moment. It is being present with others and holding their pain and suffering together that helps us all heal. It's a pretty powerful story of an amazing woman. Lauren, through the process of forgiveness, healed her trauma, discovered her self-worth, cultivated self-compassion for herself and for others, even those that she met who did heinous acts of violence. You can say she transformed her painful experiences into gold. And then not only in her own inner transformation from the forgiveness work that she did, it led her to help others on the path to use forgiveness. And going into, I think it's now 15 years that she is the director of Hawaii's Friends of Restorative Justice. And unlike the usual justice system that we may find here in the United States that is based on an eye for an eye, a punitive system, a violent system, or what Desmond and Mfu Tutu would call getting caught up in the cycle of revenge. And instead, restorative justice follows the path of nonviolence. At the core, recognizes the sacred worth and humanity of all people, knowing that those who wound are wounded. Now, that's not about excusing what people do, but it's about the path of healing, of recognizing that abuse cycles with abuse, and that sometimes when people feel threatened and do not feel like their own needs are met, they just follow the same cycle over and over. And with restorative justice, it's based on rehabilitation, people telling their stories, healing, and it's inviting both the perpetrators and the victims into sharing their story, sharing their hurt, and coming to a place where even engaging the community in the rehabilitation of those who find themselves in the justice system. And so Mfu and Desmond, in their work and the research that they did, found that when anyone experiences hurt, harm, pain, and suffering that has been inflicted either by our own behavior or the behavior of another, that we have a choice, that we can follow or engage in the revenge cycle, or we can follow the forgiveness cycle. And so I just want to kind of go over this with you a bit. So the common thing is, right, first there's a hurt, there's a wound, there's a pain and suffering, whether it's been self-inflicted or by another. So in the path of healing, which is each part of the fourfold path of forgiveness, we will explore each step. So it's based on healing, transformation, turning the wound into gold, so to speak. So it's looking at telling the story, naming the hurt, granting forgiveness by looking at their shared humanity. It doesn't mean forgetting, and we'll get into all of that. I'm not going to spend, because we're going to spend a lot of detailed time on that. And then at the end, you have a choice. If it's yourself, you renew the relationship, right? You claim new behavior. If it's with somebody else, you can renew the relationship with them, claiming, new ways of being, or you can choose to release the relationship, but you do it not from a place of anger or revenge, but from a place of truth and knowing, from a place of wisdom. So I want to look at we're going to go into some of these aspects of the revenge cycle. There's wounding. It's all based on perpetuation of the wound or the hurt or the harm. It's like we cycle and cycle. And so some of these aspects are stuffing, projecting, having a perceived enemy, rejects shared humanity. I'm not going to have any of that. And it's the re-injuring, retaliating, and paying back. So you might be saying in this moment, maybe, yeah, Reverend Angela, this here, what you're showing me, this may be really great for great big hurts or violent acts like Lauren, but do I really need this? I practice this, I practice that, and I'm going to say, take what you like and leave the rest. But nevertheless, are you willing? And Desmond states there is no act too small or too big for this process of healing. And as you contemplate, do I really need this over spatting with my sister, or the annoyances I experience with my partner, or the day-to-day patterns I seem to keep engaging in of procrastination, playing small? Do I really need this? I didn't have one of those great big violent things. So as I go through this, I want you to see if you've ever find yourself, because the word revenge sounds like, oh, I don't do revenge, right? I'm not in that stuffing, projecting. So I want to see if you could find yourself in any of this, ever. So let's take a look at stuffing. Something comes up. We may not really want to look at it. Yes, we go to our prayers and affirmations, and I invite you to continue to do that. But if you find yourself saying, hey, I'm going to tough it up. I don't need to look at this. Everything's okay. My life is rosy. What I would find in being a family therapist for a lot of years is this. Some people would just share every little, just love to keep going, over and over, telling the wounds and the stories. And there's a place for that, but they would kind of be stuck. And then you would have the other extreme was everything was great, wonderful parents, perfect parents. Now, I know that if we're in this human experience, I'm not saying that your parent was an abuser, but if you were in the human experience, you did experience some kind of hurt, right? But the rosy glasses makes us say, I don't need to look at that. No big deal. I'm just going to jump to gratitude. Now, the more you do your spiritual work, there is probably a shorter time where you can see the gratitude. So some people also remain in the intellect. Now, I know all of you know on some level about forgiveness. And week after week, I come up here teaching spiritual topics or talking about spiritual things. And I'm sure if you've been on the path of self-empowerment, spiritual awakening, that you have heard a lot of the material that I have said. And so when I find somebody saying to me, I know this already, then if you're stuck in the intellect, I'm more interested in what is your experience. Can you tell me about your experience? I'm not interested so much about you spitting out the theories and the knowledge, but can you be vulnerable enough to embrace your humanity? And I know I've shared this, but I think it's important. What spiritual bypassing is the tendency to use spiritual ideas and practice to avoid or sidestep unresolved emotional issues, or humanity pretty much, psychological wounds, and unfinished tasks. And so then we look at projection. You've heard of all of these, right? Again, this is all part of being in the wounding cycle. And I love it here. It's hard for me to read on this screen, so I'll turn. So we see the things not as they are, but as we are, right? We don't even realize all the stories that are playing in the background, okay? So here a woman walks in. It's been a whole month of her coming in late, and her boss says, I will not tolerate you coming late to the office again. And she leaves and says, my boss hates me. She's looking for an excuse to fire me, right? So could it be after a month of showing up late, you might want to look at that behavior? You know, I'm just asking. And it's often very common for men who have been conditioned that it's not okay to have the emotions of shame or embarrassment. But it is okay for men to get angry. And so sometimes we can see a man who is raging or getting angry, and really what is being projected, his inability to experience his own shame or his own embarrassment. And so we move to having an enemy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we did this in the last series. It's basically when you think that someone or something is the reason why you can't move ahead in your life. It could be yourself, it could be another person. And I wanted to point out the words that Lauren shared in our excerpt that speaks to that. Here she got assaulted, right, violently, and what she shares in her story is, my shame and guilt were overwhelming. I felt like the attack was my fault. I felt more ashamed and afraid that his compassion and not my strength saved me. How many of you who've had something either abusive, not nice, unkind happen to you, and you took the blame, right? Thought it was all your fault. And again, it's not about the blame game, but can you relate? Then we move into re-injuring, paybacks, retaliating. And here we can see when it's turned inward, the example that Lauren gives. Why are you so awful that a stranger wanted to kill you? What's wrong with you? The thoughts echoed from my childhood living with a mentally ill parent in an abusive household, which I left to go on my own at the age of 14. So let's bring this down to having the payback with another, maybe something that might be relatable. Oh, You know, my friend Nancy, if I don't call her, she'll never call me. You know what? I'm going to stop calling her. You know, Uncle Sam only put $25 in the envelope for Sammy's bar mitzvah. I'm probably saying the wrong thing. Is that right? Is that for a boy? I'm saying, right? Or, you know, Aunt Lucy only put $25 in the envelope for the wedding. You know what? When her son, Mark, gets married, I'm going to do the same. That's payback. Anytime you are using someone else's behavior as the reason you will not act this in your wholeness, in your essence, from your highest place, anytime you're using something out there, tit for tat, that's payback. So I want to say to you, has anybody saw themselves in some small way or big way in the revenge cycle at some point in their life? Okay. So here's what I'm going to ask you. I always say, take what you like and leave the rest. And you're always willing to do that. What I say is not the only thing, and what I preach or teach or share isn't it. But one thing that I have learned, I've looked at many works of forgiveness, but I have the beginner's mind of willingness. Because guess what? If we're in this human condition, we will have something to forgive. And again, reminding you of Charles Fillmore's definition is letting go of error, consciousness, or when we are acting and behaving in a way that is out of alignment with our wholeness and our highest self. I know you move through your day at least doing that one time, right? So as long as you have that, I ask you, will you just be willing to pick something in your life and enter the fourfold path of forgiveness? I just invite you into that. So today is Palm Sunday. And the master teacher, Jesus, entered. This is the commemoration of the master teacher entering the holy city of Jerusalem to honor Passover. Not Easter, Passover. And we knew that the Roman Empire and the soldiers were entering from the west to control the people because throngs of people went to temple. And the Roman Empire used a punitive model of oppression, of not seeing the sacred worth. You can say they were definitely caught in the revenge cycle. And here we had Jesus entering on from the east on a donkey, dressed in modest clothing of a peasant, followed by people with palms. And like any other master, he was showing another way. He was teaching that each person had sacred worth. He was speaking truth to power to the Roman Empire in a way that was in nonviolent means, but spoke the truth. So we know that any master like Jesus was not interested in having people worship him. He was about ultimately being a teacher, a model. That's why we call him the way shower. And so metaphysically, Palm Sunday is about us knowing we enter the holy city within. We do not look out here in this world to find our peace. And the metaphysical meaning is the habitation of peace. And in order for us to even experience that, we must be willing to heal and transform whatever hurts, where we are out of alignment with the truth of us in nonviolent means. And the palm represents our resiliency and our strength. just like the resiliency and strength that Lauren has endured. And I know each one of you have had your own story, maybe not like Lauren's, but your story of transforming your wound into gold. And so I'm going to be handing out these little pieces of palm, and we're going to do something with them next week. But I would like you to take that as a symbol, as that which I asked you a couple weeks ago, what am I willing to forgive? That will be the symbol that we use that for next week. And then we're going to have the vision of our transformation. And I'm still in the works. It's percolating. So my message to you is, may you be willing to forgive, let go of all that is untrue within you. And I close with these words of Lauren. Letting go of resentment for ourselves and others frees us to love more deeper and allows us to focus, to be mindful of the present moment. It is in being present with others and holding their pain and suffering together that helps us all heal. And so it is. Amen, and have a blessed week.